I was holding the pen to sign my daughter's birth certificate when the woman I loved whispered 7 words that shattered my entire future. I don't know if she's yours. The room didn't spin. It didn't go silent. That's what movies get wrong. The nurse was still laughing with another family outside the door. Machines continued their steady beeping. Somewhere down the hall, another newborn let out a healthy cry. The world kept moving. Mine simply stopped. I'm 42 now. People know me as the owner of a successful construction company. They see the tailored suits, the lake house, the charitable donations, the scholarships I quietly pay for every year. They think I have everything. What they don't see is the nursery I painted twice, or the tiny crib I built with my own hands, or the little girl's name I carried in my heart years before she ever took her first breath. Her name was Lily. And for 18 years, she believed I never loved her. I met Emily when we were 13. Middle school romances rarely last, but somehow ours did. She was fearless. I was the quiet kid who preferred fixing broken bicycles to playing football. She used to tease me. You'd repair the whole world if someone handed you a toolbox. I'd grin. If you lived in that world, probably. We grew up together. First dances. Graduation. Late night drives with no destination. Everyone assumed we'd marry someday. Honestly. So did we. Then, when I was 17, everything changed. A drunk driver crossed into my lane. I don't remember the impact. Only waking up in a hospital weeks later. Broken ribs. Shattered pelvis. Internal injuries. Months of rehabilitation. One afternoon, my parents sat beside my hospital bed while a doctor explained the damage. He cleared his throat carefully. There was significant trauma. I nodded. I'll recover. You will. He hesitated. But it's extremely unlikely you'll ever father biological children. At 17. Those words didn't seem real. Kids weren't even on my mind. Emily squeezed my hand afterward. She kissed my forehead. I don't care. You sure? I fell in love with you. She smiled through tears. Not your DNA. I believed her. For years. I never doubted her. By 30, we'd built a beautiful life. I had started my company from a single pickup truck and 2 employees. Business exploded. Emily taught elementary school. We bought our first home. I proposed beside the same lake where we'd shared our first kiss. She cried before I even finished asking. Life finally felt fair again. Then one autumn evening, she walked into the kitchen holding a pregnancy test. Positive. I stared at it for almost a minute. No. She laughed nervously. I took 3. But I know what the doctors said. So do I. She wrapped both arms around me. Maybe miracles happen. I completely believed they did. For the first time since that hospital room, hope outweighed fear. I became obsessed with preparing for fatherhood. Every parenting book. Every baby class. Every midnight conversation about names. When Emily suggested Lily, I smiled instantly. That's her. You like it? I love it. I painted tiny flowers across one nursery wall because she'd once mentioned loving gardens. I built shelves shaped like little houses. I spent hours assembling furniture I'd probably overpaid for. My younger brother, Daniel, even helped carry in the crib. Funny. Looking back. He stood inside the room meant for my future daughter. Smiling. Laughing. Helping me prepare for a life he already knew wasn't mine. I never noticed the guilt in his eyes. Lily arrived on a rainy Tuesday. She had a full head of dark hair. 10 tiny fingers. 10 tiny toes. The moment they placed her in my arms, every scar from that accident suddenly felt worth surviving. I whispered, Hi, sweetheart. She wrapped her impossibly small fingers around one of mine. I cried harder than she did. Hours later, the nurse returned with paperwork. Birth certificate. Signatures. Routine forms. I picked up the pen. Emily's voice barely rose above a whisper. Wait. I looked up. She couldn't meet my eyes. There's something I have to tell you. A cold feeling crawled into my chest. What is it? Her lips trembled. I made a mistake. What mistake? She inhaled sharply. There was someone else. Silence. Who? She finally looked at me. My voice broke before hers did. Daniel. She nodded once. I don't know whose baby she is. I stared at her. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my mind simply refused to accept the words. You're joking. I'm sorry. No. I never meant. Don't. She reached for my hand. I stepped backward. The nurse quietly picked up the birth certificate and left the room without saying a word. The DNA results arrived 2 weeks later. I already knew. Somewhere deep inside. I already knew. Still. Reading the words hurt more than any broken bone I'd ever suffered. Probability of paternity, 0%. I sat in my truck for nearly 3 hours. No music. No phone. Nothing. Just breathing. Trying to understand how someone could lose a child who had never truly been theirs. Emily moved out within months. Eventually, she married Daniel. They raised Lily together. Family gatherings became impossible. I never blamed Lily. Never once. She hadn't chosen any of it. But every time she smiled, I remembered the nursery. Every birthday reminded me of the father I almost became. Therapy saved me. My therapist asked one question that changed everything. Can you love someone and still protect yourself from the pain they unintentionally represent? The answer, eventually, was yes. So I stopped forcing myself into situations that left me emotionally destroyed. I remained close with my other nieces and nephews. I attended birthdays, graduations, soccer games. I paid college tuition whenever I could. But with Lily, I stayed polite, kind, respectful, just distant. She deserved warmth. I simply wasn't capable of giving it without reopening wounds I'd spent years stitching closed. On Lily's 18th birthday, everything unraveled. The whole family gathered for dinner. After dessert, she stood, holding a small envelope. Inside was an acceptance letter to her dream university. Everyone applauded. Then she looked directly at me. Uncle Ryan, I'm proud of you. She swallowed. I need to ask something. The room grew quiet. You paid for Ethan. My nephew nodded. And Sarah. Another nod. Jacob too. I knew where this was going. Her voice cracked. Was I the only one who wasn't worth believing in? Emily immediately interrupted. Lily. No. She looked at me. I deserve an answer. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Sweetheart, this isn't. Please. She looked back at me. What did I ever do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I looked at Emily. Then Daniel. Both silently begging me not to speak. For 18 years. I'd protected their secret. Not mine. Theirs. I turned back toward Lily. You didn't do anything. Then why? My chest tightened. Because every time I looked at you, I paused. I saw the daughter I thought was mine. The room froze. Lily frowned. What? Emily whispered. Ryan. I ignored her. I was engaged to your mother. Lily slowly looked toward Emily. What? I believed you were my miracle. Daniel stood. That's enough. I met his eyes. No. Lily's breathing became uneven. What does that mean? I answered quietly. I was supposed to be your father. The silence afterward felt endless. Then Lily asked the question nobody wanted. Am I your daughter? I shook my head. No. She looked between her parents. Neither spoke. That silence answered everything. She ran out of the house before anyone could stop her. The front door slammed so hard the family portrait in the hallway tilted sideways. Emily collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Daniel stared at me with a mixture of anger and panic. What have you done? He whispered. I looked at him for a long moment. I stopped protecting your lies. Without another word, I picked up my car keys and left. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the look on Lily's face. Not anger. Not hatred. Confusion. The kind of confusion that only comes when your entire identity falls apart in a single evening. 3 days passed. Then my phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. When I opened it, my chest tightened. Lily. I don't know who I am anymore. A second message appeared. Can we talk? Then a third. Were you ever happy when you held me as a baby? I stared at the screen for several minutes before typing my reply. Yes. Happier than I've ever been. Almost immediately, 3 little dots appeared. Then disappeared. Finally. Can we meet tomorrow? I answered with one word. Absolutely. I barely slept that night. Not because I feared the conversation, but because I had waited 18 years to finally tell her the truth. We met at a quiet coffee shop. She looked older somehow. Like grief had stolen years in 72 hours. She sat across from me. I thought you hated me. I never hated you. Then tell me. So. I did. Everything. How I'd loved her mother since childhood. How the accident stole my chance at biological children. How her pregnancy felt impossible. How I'd painted flowers across nursery walls. How I'd whispered Lily before she was ever born. How I'd held her. Believed she was my miracle. Then lost everything before signing a single document. She cried silently. I didn't know. I know. She wiped her eyes with both hands before speaking again. There was something else. What is it? My parents told me a story when I was little. I frowned. What story? She looked embarrassed. They said you once had a baby girl. I stared at her. What? They said she died shortly after she was born. I couldn't breathe. They told me her name was Lily. Every sound inside the coffee shop seemed to disappear. They said that's why you stayed away from me. Her voice trembled. They said seeing another little girl with the same name reminded you of losing your own daughter. I felt my stomach twist. There was never another baby. She blinked. What? The only Lily I ever prepared for. I swallowed hard. Was you? Tears instantly filled her eyes. My God. I chose your name. She covered her mouth. I painted flowers across your nursery walls. Another tear rolled down my face. I built your crib. She began crying openly. I held you in the hospital believing every prayer I'd ever prayed had finally been answered. I paused. Then, before I could even sign your birth certificate, I shook my head. Everything disappeared. She sobbed quietly. So they lied to me. For 18 years. She nodded through tears. I spent my entire childhood believing you hated me because I reminded you of another little girl. I reached across the table. I never hated you. What did you feel? I answered honestly. I loved the little girl I thought was mine. I smiled sadly. And every time I saw you afterward, I had to grieve her all over again. She reached across the table and took my hand. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Sometimes grief doesn't need words. Sometimes it only needs someone finally telling the truth. Over the following months, we started slowly. Coffee every Saturday. Phone calls. Long walks. No pressure. No expectations. Just honesty. She asked endless questions. What was Mom like when she was 13? I laughed. Competitive. What about you? Hopelessly in love. She smiled. You still remember? Some memories never leave. She eventually confessed something too. I always felt like something was hidden. What do you mean? My parents would stop talking whenever I entered a room. She looked down. I thought it was because I disappointed them somehow. My heart broke again. Children almost always blame themselves, even when they absolutely shouldn't. The truth spread through the family naturally. Not because I wanted revenge. Because lies eventually collapse under their own weight. Several relatives quietly distanced themselves from Emily and Daniel. Not out of hatred, but because trust, once shattered, rarely returns to its original shape. As for me, I finally stopped carrying their secret. And strangely, that made room for something new. Peace. Last spring, Lily graduated high school. This time, I sat in the front row. When her name was called, she looked directly at me. Not her parents. Me. Afterward she ran over. Without hesitation. She hugged me. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't have missed it. She smiled. You know. What? I think we finally found our way. I nodded. I think so too. I wasn't her father. I never would be. But life has a strange way of giving back pieces you thought were gone forever. Not in the same form. Not on your timetable. But sometimes. Enough to heal. If betrayal teaches anything, it's that love without truth cannot survive. If forgiveness teaches anything, it's that forgiving someone doesn't always mean inviting them back into your life. And if healing has taught me one lesson above all else, it's this. Protecting your peace isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the only reason your heart survives long enough to love again. Lily and I can't rewrite the past. We can't erase hospital rooms, broken promises, or 18 years of silence. But every Saturday, over coffee and laughter that feels a little easier each week, we prove something neither of us believed for a very long time. The people who break your heart don't get to decide how your story ends. Sometimes, the family you lose isn't the family you were meant to keep. And sometimes, the family you find after the truth finally comes out is the one that helps your heart learn how to beat again.